The night was quiet, the kind of darkness that makes every sound echo louder. When the ambulance arrived, the crew expected a routine call, maybe a minor accident, someone fainted, or a car mishap, but nothing could have prepared them for what lay ahead. On the side of a deserted road, under the harsh glare of the emergency lights, they found her, a young woman, barely conscious, her body battered and bruised, her breathing shallow, each gasp a struggle against the pain. Blood stained the pavement around her, and the weight of her injuries suggested she had been left there for hours, perhaps even longer. Her name was Maria Kovalchuk, a model once full of dreams, ambition, and hope for the future, now reduced to a fragile, broken figure, teetering between life and death. The medics quickly assessed her, their professional calm tested by the severity of her condition. Every detail of the scene whispered of a story far darker than anyone could imagine, an unseen cruelty, meticulously hidden, waiting to be uncovered. As the ambulance siren wailed into the night, carrying Maria away from the road and toward uncertain survival, no one yet knew the true depths of the nightmare she had endured, or the revelations that would shake the world of fashion, wealth, and power to its core. Maria Kovalchuk's story did not begin in darkness, but in the quiet streets of a small provincial town, where dreams often outgrew the boundaries of reality. As a child, she was surrounded by magazines filled with images of top models, glamorous dresses, and faraway runways, each page a spark of ambition in her young mind. Local beauty contests became her first taste of performance, a place where she learned to walk with poise, smile with confidence, and imagine a world beyond her modest surroundings. By the age of 20, Maria had packed her small belongings and moved to the capital, carrying nothing but hope, determination, and a fragile portfolio of photographs. Life in the city was harsh and unpredictable. She rented a tiny room, navigated countless castings, and faced the reality that modeling was unstable, contracts were scarce, fees were often small, and opportunities abroad seemed like distant dreams. Yet, with each small success, each fleeting moment on a local runway or in a modest photo shoot, Maria's ambition only grew stronger. Behind her bright eyes and composed exterior, there lingered a sense of urgency, the desire for more, the need to secure a future where her talent and beauty could flourish. But in that same ambition lay vulnerability, the subtle openness that would, unknowingly, draw her toward a world where promises of luxury masked a far more sinister reality. Amid the struggles of city life and the uncertainty of her modeling career, whispers began circulating among other young models, rumors of exclusive VIP parties held in luxurious villas abroad. The promise was simple, almost irresistible: 2 days in Dubai, surrounded by wealth and glamour, with large sums of money offered for merely showing up, looking beautiful, and following a dress code. At first, Maria dismissed the idea as fantasy, an exaggeration designed to tempt the naive. Yet the seed of curiosity had been planted. Then came a call that changed everything. A woman identifying herself as a coordinator of one such event, offering Maria $5,000 for 2 days and assuring her that all arrangements, including flights and accommodations, were already prepared. The offer seemed too good to be true, and at first, she hesitated. But when the coordinator sent photos of other models, radiant and smiling in exotic surroundings, the illusion of legitimacy solidified. Maria began to envision what she had longed for: the world of high fashion, wealth, and recognition finally within reach. Ignoring the quiet voice of caution, she agreed. In that moment, stepping toward the unknown, Maria could not have imagined the dark descent that awaited her, a world where luxury masked control, manipulation, and violence, and where a dream could transform into a living nightmare. Maria's arrival in Dubai felt like stepping into a storybook. The airport shimmered with modernity and wealth, luxury vehicles lined the curb, and a man named Rashid, introduced as her manager, greeted her with a polished smile and a European suit. He drove her through gleaming streets in an expensive SUV, pointing out the skyline, the lights, the grandeur, all while maintaining an air of calm control. The hotel was opulent, a world away from her modest apartment back home, and at first glance, everything seemed perfectly legitimate. Rashid reassured her, "You'll be paid for everything. Just be ready for the party tomorrow. No questions, no deviations." But the first warning came subtly. Her phone, a lifeline to the world she knew, was confiscated under the guise of privacy and protection. Alone in the hotel room, Maria felt a flicker of unease. It was easy to rationalize the words of her friends echoed in her mind, describing similar arrangements as routine. Yet, beneath the luxury, there was a creeping sense of loss of control, a silent barrier closing around her. She was no longer entirely free, the rules were no longer hers. And the first night in Dubai, filled with opulence and apparent glamour, would soon reveal its darker undertones, as the lines between indulgence and intimidation began to blur. The villa was breathtaking. Fountains glimmered under soft lighting, tables were laden with wine and exotic dishes, and every detail spoke of wealth and indulgence. Young women in luxurious dresses mingled with men exuding power and influence, their laughter echoing through grand halls. At first, Maria felt as if she had stepped into a fairy tale. But beneath the surface, something felt off. She noticed the men watching her and the other models with calculating eyes, measuring reactions, testing compliance. A whispered warning from another girl reached her ears. "Don't look them in the eye too boldly. They don't like that." Maria's heart raced, her instincts telling her that obedience was expected, that missteps could carry consequences far beyond embarrassment. As the night progressed, the glamorous atmosphere began to crack. Guests disappeared into private rooms, laughter faded, and the air thickened with tension. When Maria was eventually left in a room with three men dressed in traditional robes, the veneer of hospitality vanished. Subtle intimidation became overt pressure, and the first signs of coercion appeared. The realization hit her slowly but unmistakably. This was no ordinary party, no simple VIP event. The rules of her familiar world no longer applied, and the dream she had chased was dissolving into a nightmare that she could neither escape nor fully understand. As the night deepened, the villa's atmosphere shifted from elegant to ominous. The men who had seemed merely curious now exuded a chilling authority, and the guards patrolling silently reminded Maria that escape was impossible. Subtle intimidation gave way to blatant coercion. Girls were isolated, instructed to obey without question, and punished for hesitation. Maria witnessed the transformation firsthand, a peer forced to her knees for a minor perceived disobedience, her cries muffled, the guards watching impassively. The sense of power wielded by these men was suffocating. It was a language of control that demanded total compliance. Maria herself was pulled aside, hands gripped roughly, and faced with the realization that any act of resistance could provoke immediate violence. Fear became constant, a shadow that followed every movement. The glamour that had lured her here was gone, replaced by the stark clarity of a brutal hierarchy. In that moment, Maria understood a terrifying truth. She was alone in a system designed to dominate and humiliate, and the rules of ordinary decency no longer applied. Survival required navigating this world with extreme caution, yet even careful compliance offered no guarantee of safety. By the early hours, Maria's ordeal reached a terrifying climax. Exhausted, beaten, and disoriented, she was abandoned on a desolate roadside, far from the villa that had promised luxury but delivered torment. Every movement was agony. Blood stained her clothes, her body screamed in pain, and her vision blurred as she struggled to comprehend what had just happened. Semi-conscious, she lay there, powerless, a target of cruelty she could neither escape nor fully understand. Hours passed in silence, the darkness pressing down, until finally, random passers-by noticed her and called for help. The ambulance arrived, sirens piercing the night, carrying her to a hospital where the severity of her injuries became apparent. Broken bones, contusions, and deep lacerations painted a grim picture of the violence she had endured. No documents, no phone, no identification. Maria was an anonymous victim at first, a silent witness to the hidden brutality behind the glamorous facade. In the sterile hospital environment, with the beeping of machines and the urgent work of medics around her, the reality of her survival began to sink in. She had escaped death, but the nightmare was far from over. In the hospital, Maria's world was a blur of pain, medications, and the constant hum of machines. Each day was a battle to reclaim consciousness, to endure the physical agony of broken ribs, bruises, and wounds, and to face the psychological trauma that clung to her like a shadow. At first, speaking was impossible. The thought of recounting the horrors she had endured seemed unbearable. But gradually, with the support of doctors and human rights activists, she began to articulate the unthinkable. In quiet moments between treatment sessions, Maria described the parties, the men in power, and the fear that had ruled every hour of her captivity. Her voice trembled with both sorrow and anger, tears falling as she revealed the extent of the cruelty and control she had endured. The interviews were long, painstaking, but necessary a way to reclaim some measure of agency over her story. Through her testimony, investigators and journalists began to piece together a hidden network of exploitation, where beauty, wealth, and privilege masked coercion and violence. Maria's courage in speaking out marked the first step in exposing a system that thrived in secrecy, and the beginning of a long and uncertain journey toward justice. Once Maria's story reached journalists and human rights groups, the narrative shifted from a private nightmare to a public investigation. Her detailed account, describing every stage from the initial invitation to the physical abuse in the villa, sparked immediate attention. Media outlets began to report on the case, carefully verifying names, locations, and the network behind the parties. Social media erupted with speculation and outrage, but alongside support, threats emerged: strange calls, attempts to discredit her, and rumors designed to silence her. Investigators traced the intermediaries, the travel arrangements, and the questionable agency that had orchestrated the trip, slowly unraveling the mechanisms used to exploit young women. Maria, still recovering physically and emotionally, provided information patiently, naming those she remembered and describing the villa, the guests, and the guards who enforced the rules with cruelty. Her courage created ripples across the fashion and modeling world, forcing authorities to acknowledge a shadow network previously hidden behind luxury and privilege. Each revelation added to the suspense. How many girls had already suffered in silence, and how deep did the corruption go? Maria's testimony revealed only a fraction of a much larger, hidden network and intricate system that lured young women with promises of glamour, wealth, and opportunity, only to subject them to intimidation, abuse, and control. Investigators and human rights experts began connecting dots. Reports of missing models, unexplained injuries, and whispered accounts of similar parties across multiple countries. It became clear that these events were not isolated incidents but part of a systematic operation where intermediaries, villa owners, and powerful clients exploited both legal loopholes and the vulnerability of ambitious young women. Maria described how girls were transported in batches from Eastern Europe, Asia, and Africa, often unaware of the danger, until it was too late. The wealth and influence behind the operation created near-total impunity, shielding perpetrators from scrutiny and silencing victims through fear, coercion, and intimidation. The sheer scale of the network was staggering, leaving authorities grappling with the challenge of exposing crimes meticulously hidden behind layers of privilege, secrecy, and financial power. Maria's bravery in coming forward illuminated a shadow world where beauty and ambition were manipulated for cruelty, and every revelation added to the chilling sense that this was only the tip of the iceberg. Despite the growing attention on Maria's case, the path to justice was fraught with obstacles. Legal experts warned that proving criminal intent in such complex, international networks was incredibly difficult. Contracts were often carefully crafted, travel arrangements appeared legitimate on paper, and perpetrators operated in jurisdictions far from accountability. Meanwhile, Maria faced persistent threats, anonymous calls, social media attacks, and attempts to discredit her story, all intended to intimidate and silence her. Even as authorities began investigating intermediaries and the villa, the influence of money and connections loomed large, slowing progress and creating gaps in enforcement. For Maria, recovery was not only physical but legal and emotional. The risk of retaliation remained real. Yet, she refused to be cowed. She continued providing detailed testimony, identifying names, locations, and the individuals involved, determined that her ordeal would serve as a warning to others. Every disclosure carried weight, but also danger, and the tension between exposing the truth and ensuring personal safety created a constant, haunting suspense, one that underscored the precarious balance between courage and vulnerability in confronting powerful, hidden networks. Maria Kovalchuk's story ends not with resolution, but with a stark warning, a glimpse into a world where ambition and beauty can be exploited, and where power shields cruelty from scrutiny. Sitting in her hospital bed, bandages and scars a testament to her survival, she speaks with a determination that contrasts sharply with the trauma she endured. Her goal is clear: to expose the system, to warn other girls, and to ensure that voices silenced by fear can be heard. Experts and journalists agree that her testimony may be just the beginning and an urgent call to investigate, reform, and protect those at risk. Yet even as the public learns of her ordeal, shadows of the network remain, unseen, unaccountable, and ready to continue unless vigilance persists. Maria's courage serves as both inspiration and a chilling reminder. Behind the veneer of luxury and glamour, darkness can hide in plain sight. Her message is simple but powerful: awareness, vigilance, and speaking out are the first steps toward breaking cycles of abuse. As the camera fades to black, viewers are left with a lingering question. How many more remain trapped, unseen, in the shadows of the glittering world we admire from afar? If Maria's story moved you, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share. Your voice could help shine a light on the hidden truths waiting to be uncovered.